of Sisters Corner. We've had a break for a while, and I know you've been watching reruns. We had a break for fasting, and alhamdulillah, hopefully all of you had an amazing spiritual experience, as well as benefiting from the whole month, the whole blessed month, physically as well. But we've all gone back to business, all back to our daily lives, and actually it's such a pleasure to be joined here as part of my daily life back on the show by Sister Harun Hussein Saunders, who's going to talk to us about her various community leadership roles, as well as her time as a local councillor, and particularly some of the campaigns and charity works that she's been involved in. So really welcome, Harun, and thank you for making time to see us.
Thank you for having me in the show. Thank you.
No,
Lovely seeing you.
And you too.
Yeah, considering we live so close to each other, we just don't see each other as much.
Yeah. This is one of the things I was trying to work on during fasting. It's trying to remember what's important, and family and friends, and unfortunately work and life takes over, doesn't it?
Of course.
But you're no stranger to that, because you've actually juggled a lot in your young life.
Thank you.
And obviously eternally young. You still look like I saw you 20 odd years ago. So
Yeah, I love you as well.
Well, we don't age, do we? It's just a number. We will age, and we'll do what needs to happen, and we'll do it gracefully, I hope. Anyway,
Inshallah.
so do you want to tell us a little bit about what you're doing now? And then I'd like to we're very blessed, like I said. Harun is an ex-councillor, but she's also an ex-Deputy Lord Mayor of Bradford. So I'd really like to talk to you a little bit about, what's the mindset that gets you going there. So maybe if we start with exactly what you're up to now, and then, sorry, there's just a little hair in the way. And then,
well, right now I'm working for NHS England. I'm working on a project called Continuing Healthcare. And if lots of people are looking and thinking, what is she on about? It's fine. Not a lot of people know about it, because the NHS is the NHS, and everybody just sees it as it's there when we need it. Continuing healthcare is when people get very old and start needing to be looked after, and there is an element of something called social care, which is what the council pay for, and healthcare, which is to do with, so if somebody's really old and really frail, and it's frail and it's impacting on their health, then it's what NHS will look after and take care of them. If it's not NHS, then council will look after the social care element, will kick in.
that sounds like quite a scary and senior role, is that right?
It's the national role, and I'm loving it. I really appreciate the challenge, and you learn loads. You learn so much, and it's not front facing, so we don't see members of public, we don't see what I class as real people, but I'm loving it, just getting to know so much happening up and down the country, and it's an area that needed looking at. So the national policy document, which is called the National Framework, that's been updated this year, and it will go live in October, so we're sort of doing lots of preparation to make sure that what the policy document says we can deliver on, otherwise we're stuck.
And ultimately, that I suppose as a country we can look after our older people properly, in the manner that they need it, at the time that they need it, in the place that they need it.
It's so important. My mother is in that position. You will have relatives and family friends who are in that position, and we all do. That's how we came to this planet, because we have predecessors, parents, and people, grandparents, and it's so important to get it right so that they have a dignified time, those last few, but sometimes it can be, because continuing healthcare kicks in quite late on, so it can be weeks or months, maybe a year or two, so they have a dignified time before they leave us.
That is really important, isn't it? But I think it's fair to mention, whilst we're here and talking on this subject, that this year is a big anniversary for the NHS.
Oh, it is.
Isn't it?
I can't believe it. I've been in the NHS 24 years. Wow. I know. I'm just like, wow. And since I started working in the NHS, I haven't looked back. I've loved every job I've had. I've had lots of different jobs in it, and I love it. And it's 70 years old. It defines UK, I think. I don't think a lot of people realise how much it defines the society we live in. The fact that if you tripped over and fall in the streets, an ambulance will come and pick you up, take you to hospital, sort you out, and if you can't arrange your own transport, somebody will drop you off. My you will know my parents are originally from Bangladesh. I do go and visit. I have a sister there, so I do go and visit her often. And people have to, before you even think about feeling ill and thinking about going to doctors or your hospital or something, you have to count your pennies. You have to figure out, can you afford to go? You have to figure out, can you pay the visit, because they charge a visit before you even see him,
Yeah. And
you
then
have to
for
pay
every
to be
bit
seen.
of medication and treatment. Every single bit is itemised, isn't it?
Itemised and cost. And people forget that, and we don't appreciate it as much. The fact that, whatever illness we have, the NHS will deal with it. They will look after you. They will try their best in everything in their capacity to make you better.
So, I mean, it is a great institution, and I know we've been through trying times as a nation recently. And without getting into the politics of it, what can ordinary brothers and sisters, families out there do to support the NHS?
A few things. They can respect it, respect the people who work within it. I think some people forget that in their stress or in their worries or when they're having anxiety about some of their loved ones. They have to appreciate that people out there are there to look after them, and not, and sometimes it doesn't feel like that when you're anxious or when you're worried, or if your mother's poorly, or if your if your child's poorly, you just want the whole world to be around that child to make everything better, and that's not true. But actually, just remember, those people are there to make your child better, so just give them the opportunity and the time. And the other thing I would say is not to take advantage of it, because sometimes people go and they want paracetamol, they've got a headache, and you think actually it costs a fraction. It costs 20 pence to buy a packet of paracetamols. If you go to supermarket, they are 20 pence, aren't
20
they?
pence, 50 pence
20
maximum.
pence, for a packet of paracetamols. Any supermarket, any discount stores will sell them. You really don't need an appointment with the doctor to tell them that you have a cold or you've got a headache and you need paracetamol.
Because when you add all that up, that costs hundreds of pounds, doesn't it?
So
that
it
packet
just
of
becomes
paracetamol,
so expensive.
it stops being 50 pence. It's not, even if you had to pay for the prescription, it's not £8. When you type in the, when you add in
the time, the appointment, your time in going for that appointment, you might have to get a taxi up. So it's actually costs you, but it costs the NHS far, far more, because a doctor isn't just that appointment time. A doctor is a whole system. So an appointment with the doctor costs a lot more than the 5 minutes you spend within the within that doctor's, or with the doctor within that surgery. So it's really important. And I understand when you're worried, and especially when it's a child, definitely, if that child is worrying, you definitely take them to the doctor, or
and
ring.
if it's persistent and it's been a few days and there are other things that are not feeling right, you don't know how you feel. And we're not saying don't use your doctor, it's just appropriate times. And I think that's the other thing people can do to help is making the right choice. So, if you have got, like this week I've had a cold and I've been doing what I call self-care, which, I've stayed at home, I've drank lots of fluids, I've stayed cool, I've, taken a bit of Lemsip when I felt like, I'm congested, I've, inhaled a bit of steam. So those self-care choices for, things. And if it carries on and, by the next weekend my sinuses are still hurting, then I will probably go and see someone. But you can make those choices. You can go and ask for a bit of advice from from your paracetamol, from your pharmacy.
Pharmacists are an amazing place. They know lots about medication. So actually, if you're going to pay for a prescription, $7.99 or whatever it is at the moment, you might get an over-the-counter medicine, at half the price. Definitely worth going to have a chat with them, and definitely worth ringing the NHS, the helpline number, the 911 number, or googling NHS, choices, because you can look and it'll tell you, it'll give you, say, oh, it's, from what you said, it sounds like. And
that really does help. I remember, I can't remember what the number was at the time, but it was NHS Direct. It's now it's 111, isn't it? And I remember ringing because I had this. Actually, it was a headache, but it was when something's wrong. And I'd had meningitis previously, so the lady on the line, she listened to me. She could tell I was in pain, and she said, because of your history, go to A&E, so she can talk you through what's happened. So if I hadn't already had an episode, she would have been. And as it happened, and I didn't know it was possible, it was a really extreme case of sinusitis.
It
And when I told the
it
doctor, but
happens.
it feels as painful as when I had meningitis, and she said, it will do.
Yeah.
It's just the root cause is different.
And I don't want anybody watching this to think actually the 111 number, they just can't, you know, they don't want you to go.
No.
Actually they do, they just want to make sure you're in that right state to need to go. And they can decide between sending you to doctor, sending you to your hospital, sending you to A&E, you know.
An out of hours
they
doctor.
can, out of hours. So it's actually just giving you more choice rather than trying to book an appointment with your GP.
Actually, A&E, I'm sorry, who wants to go and sit there? I know it can't be
For
helped.
hours.
But who wants to go and sit there for hours and hours
Yeah.
and hours if you can avoid it? And when you get there, you do kind of get stuck actually.
Yeah.
What I mean by stuck is my doctor sent me there for some concerns a few years ago, and I was like, actually, I don't think it's that bad. And you know, several tests and things later, you know, my husband saw me walking, come out on a wheelchair, and he's like, "What's happened?" And I was just like, "Doctor was really concerned." So, you know, but I was just like, seriously, you know, next time I saw her, I said, "Don't send me there again," because no one wants to really. And we also, the other thing I suppose is just be aware that if we are taking time up with a cold or something like that, you know, something small, we are possibly preventing someone else getting the really urgent care they need. You know, and that's the other thing. So it's about our respect for self, but respect for others. But it is an absolutely amazing institution, and I know, you know, we obviously, by the grace of Allah, we all live here and we all survive and we all get better from our illnesses. But my mum died from cancer, you know, 21 years ago this year. May she rest in peace. And she, you know, she did get some really good quality care from the nurses and the doctors and the professionals who looked after her. There were one or two who gave us a bit of a challenge, but generally there's no way we could have done what she needed. And the district nurses actually, so it's, the NHS is a lot more than just the doctors you see obviously. The district nurses who came and helped us look after her at home were absolutely amazing. So, you know, I'm such a, to say I'm a fan of an institution sounds like an odd thing, but I am, and I do think it's a blessing that we should do all our best to protect and make sure, you know, it's here in generations.
And if you're thinking about, if you're young and you're thinking about a career choice, you know, why not? You know, definitely worth going into. Definitely. Actually, if you're not so young and you're thinking about a career choice, it's definitely worth training up. You know, and you could start off in a healthcare assistant. Or, you know, entering the NHS system, you can enter at any level with any level of qualification.
A family friend who did just that. Her first job was healthcare assistant. She's a midwife now. And has been for many years. So it's not just like it's entry points, you know.
Can be at any level. People can go and get, you know, at 30 people can go and train up to be a doctor and enter as a new doctor. Why
absolutely.
Not?
I know.
I feel like I'm such an advert, you know, for NHS. But like I said, I love it. I love the, like you said, you know, I love the institution just because I see how much good it does. And like you know, you see family members, you see friends, and you know, you see the care they're given and taken care of, you know.
And we have to look after it,
and we have to, if we don't look after it, how will it survive? If we don't value it, the politicians don't. They're not worried about it.
So, moving on then.
She says,
I know,
politicians.
Because I think, no, well, it's not that. We can absolutely talk about that. And we are going to talk about your time in politics, clearly. I was just thinking that, you know, we're both so passionate about the NHS, we could just talk for the next hour about
we
the
could
NHS.
Easily.
We might have to do a show on that, actually, just purely on that. That would be quite good fun. And interesting, and it is, you know, something to value, and we are privileged here. You know, and I say this to sort of my friends and family. I said, if you've got a roof over your head, you've got food in your belly, and you've got, you know, some way to have an income, we're doing better than probably 99% of the world, actually.
You know, people forget that.
And we've got sanitation, and we've got, you know, we're safe. That's such a blessing. So, absolutely. Anyway. What I was wondering is, I've always known you, clearly you're a very passionate person, and you've always sort of had a cause, if you like. So when I met you many moons ago, you were a community worker, sort of working in the heart of the Bangladeshi community. And I remember at the time, you were really heavily involved in setting up some healthy gardening work.
I suppose that again, it's, you know, harking on to, I think you have a natural inclination when you want to do stuff for your local population or the local community, you either want to do it or you don't. People can't be trained to do it. I mean, there is some element where people get in the job and think, oh, I actually like it, but there's got to be some natural inheritance, and I think I was born with it. But I think it's part of our upbringing, because we are the second generation, you and I and other people like us, and we're second generation migrants, or what are they, you know, where are we, is there such a word as impact, because expats are people going out of the country.
Yeah, either migrants or your immigrants.
Yeah,
or
yeah,
your
I know,
emigrants.
but usually, yeah. So anyway, but I think we are, and you naturally, inherently are helpful, aren't you? Because you always, I mean, I wasn't born in the UK, so I was 11 when my mother moved and joined my father with me and my 2 younger brothers. So you naturally are helpful to other people, even when you can't speak their language or when you can't do something, you know, that if you see somebody in difficulty, you tend to just go and say, you're all right. And I think that's what led me into community development work. So I started working in the local community centre, and there, you know, there were challenging bits and there were exciting bits, and there were things where you think, actually, I really enjoy doing this. And it was part of my link between the NHS and the community development role, where I was promoting heart health, as you know, helping people, what is now classed as self-care, you know, helping people to help themselves. So it wasn't so much, you know, go to doctors and get some tablets. It was a case of, before you get to that stage, let's look at what we can do to stop you getting ill. And years back, what the research found was, so this is going back 24 years. What they found was, you know, the BME community, the ethnic minority community, or the first generation, our parents who came over in the 60s and 70s, they've had a massive change. They've come and they've worked exceptionally hard. They've worked without family support. The diet hasn't been that good. They haven't, you know, looked after themselves because they've been busy working hard. You know, your father would have worked. My father, you know, worked nights, and a lot of people did hard labour. And of course, as they were getting old, they weren't, you know, they weren't really retiring and getting old slowly. They were getting old quite fast, getting a lot of old diseases, or what is classed as diseases of the older generation, which was heart disease and diabetes. Go on.
I know. We're just going to have a break in a few seconds. So when we come back, you're going to tell us quickly about that sort of initial, you know, project that you worked on, and then we're going to spend a little bit of time with our viewers talking about your role as a councillor and as a city and district mayor as well, because that's quite huge. And then we really want to, because it's Plastics Awareness Month.
Plastic Free is July.
Plastic Free July.
Yes.
So we definitely want to talk about that. So we're going to have to be really disciplined, because I think we can talk about these subjects, each of them for 1 hour at least. So inshallah, in a few seconds we'll be back, and we'll pick up where we left off.